Have you ever wondered how to have difficult conversations around race or just difficult conversations in general? By the end of this video, you're going to have real tips, real tricks, real secrets on how to do just that. Hi, I'm Rebecca Zung, top 1% attorney and the best-selling author of the books Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a step-by-step divorce guide. And I've helped thousands go from lives of drama, trauma, and chaos to step into lives of freedom, possibility, and purpose. And I do the same thing right here for you in these videos. So before we go any further, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you will be notified every time I upload brand new content just for you. So this is part 2 of my incredible conversation with Kwame Christian, attorney, TEDx speaker, and also the founder of the American Negotiation Institute. And we are continuing our conversation on how to have difficult conversations around race and how to have difficult conversations in general. So without further ado, let's dive into part 2.
The problem that we have when we come to our understanding of American history as it relates to the current issues that we have in race is that for the majority of Americans, the only understanding they have about a racial history of America is, hey, we did some bad things to Native Americans, but we had Thanksgiving. We did some bad things to slaves, but thank goodness we have Abraham Lincoln who saved them. And then we were still doing some bad things, but then thank goodness Martin Luther King was good and he helped us. And now we're good now. Now we're good. But
yeah, just get over it. It's fine.
Right. But we're missing so much. And because of that, inability to truly understand the racial history, if those are the only points of reference we have for racism, then it's going to make it incredibly difficult to see what racism is today. Because, hey, nobody got lynched, nobody's enslaved, we didn't slaughter a bunch of Native Americans, so I don't see racism today. And now that that we've gotten over the civil rights type of era, I've been told, Martin Luther King said, I want to see a future where I'm judged by the content of my character. That's what I want to do. So now I don't even see race. And so if you can't see race, then you can't see racism. If you don't see racism, you don't see a problem. If you don't identify a problem, you can't solve it. And so that's where we are right now. We're having to try to persuade people that there is a problem. And I think that's one of the biggest disconnects when we have these conversations too, getting to a common understanding of the fact that there is a problem, and then transitioning from the recognition that there is a problem to there's a responsibility that each of us have to try to solve the problem. And then we get to a point of what can we do about it? But again, it's those difficult conversations that need to happen, but we're just not equipped. We don't have the language, we don't have the cultural and historical context, and we don't have the conflict resolution skills to work through it.
Yeah. So I really do feel like a lot of that darkness is being exposed now, finally. You know, it took a knee to George Floyd's neck. You know, I think it's part of how we're finally shedding light on this and finally having conversations around this. We had to have riots all over the country in order for people to finally go, okay, maybe there still is a problem here. And you know, right around the same time was that guy who was bird watching, what was his name? Something Cooper, Christian Cooper, I think his name was.
Yeah.
Who, you know, the woman calls up and says an African-American man is attacking me. And the guy turns out to be like a Harvard graduate who was, you know, bird watching. I mean, like of all the things, you know. So thank God we're finally shedding light on this and having this conversation, right? I want to get to your 3-step method, but I wanted to just share a story on the air here about, you know, my own stuff. You know, I was teased a lot for being Chinese growing up. I grew up in McLean, Virginia. It wasn't even like podunk, whatever. I mean, it was right next to DC, and I had a lot of that. I was teased on the playground mercilessly for being Asian. I had somebody write in my yearbook in 7th grade, I've been meaning to ask you, are you some kind of a chink? You know, things like that, that they probably didn't even think anything of it. I mean, I don't even know. But it definitely existed for me growing up. So I still feel it. I know that all people of any color who are not white feel it, regardless of who you are, whether you're Hispanic or Native American or gay, or, if you're not a straight white person, then you feel it. So let's talk about your 3-step method and ways that people can start to have some actual tools to have these conversations.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that story too, because I think it segues really well into the method. Because initially with the book, I'll show it to you here. The book is called "Nobody Will Play with Me." I'm going to rebrand it to "Finding Confidence in Conflict." It's just more on brand. But the reason it was called "Nobody Will Play with Me" was because, remember, I'm small town Ohio. That's where I grew up. Only Black people in the area, and we were Caribbean, so I had a strong accent, incredibly different. And I remember on the playground, first grade, I remember going to different groups of people saying, "Hey, can I play with you?" And nobody would play with me. And so I went back into the classroom just bawling my eyes out. And the teacher said, "What happened?" I said, "Nobody would play with me." And so for
Oh, I
me,
so feel that. I so
yeah.
feel that because I had the same thing.
Right. And I
Uh,
don't think people can really identify with what it feels like to be so lonely.
mhm.
And so for me, the impact of that when it came to my abilities to have difficult conversations was it made me a people pleaser. I worked so hard to get these friends. I'm not going to have difficult conversations and risk these relationships, right? And so the book talks about how you can find confidence in conflict. So getting over those psychological and emotional barriers help you to dig deeply within yourself so you could figure out where it comes from, and then gives you the simple 3-step framework, which I call the compassionate curiosity framework. And so step 1 is acknowledging and validating emotions. Step 2 is getting curious with compassion. And step 3 is engaging in joint problem solving. And it's a flexible framework. I teach it in my negotiation trainings, whether it's a Fortune 100 company negotiating 9-figure deals, or somebody who is negotiating with their child. It is a flexible framework that you can use at work and at home, and it works really, really well in these difficult conversations about race.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So tell us more about step 1.
Yeah, so acknowledging and validating emotions. And so this framework is intentionally flexible. So whenever you see the specter of a potentially problematic emotion, you want to acknowledge that and validate it. And all we're saying is it seems like, or it sounds like, that type of thing. So we're summarizing, but summarizing using emotion-based language, because the magic is once you label an emotion, if there's somebody's having an emotional response, they're using their amygdala, they're triggered, fight, flight, freeze, they're not thinking at their highest level. But once you label the emotion, you have to use your prefrontal cortex to think through, hey, is that label correct? And so when we do that, even if we're wrong, they'll correct us, which causes them to label the emotion themselves, which causes them eventually to calm down. And so when it comes to validating, it's acknowledging and validating emotions. All we're saying is that makes sense. We're not saying we agree with what it is that they're saying. We're just saying that makes sense. And so people start to calm down when they feel seen in that way. And a lot of times we can't even get to a point where we're having a legitimate conversation. It's just two people who are highly emotional and highly triggered, expressing their emotions to each other, but not truly listening. And so that first step is the most important step, and it helps you to then transition into a more meaningful dialogue.
They're just so perfect. I mean, we're so meant to connect because my book is called Negotiate Like You Matter. Robert Shapiro wrote the foreword, and it just came out in September. It went to #1 on Amazon the day it was released. And M stands for my value is defined by me. You and you alone define your value. And the reason I call the book Negotiate Like You Matter is because all human beings have the same need, which is to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. To feel like we are valued, to feel like we have been seen, that we're being acknowledged and being respected. And I always say that it doesn't matter what you're negotiating, and whether it's two kids on a playground about baseball cards or two heads of state negotiating some new NATO pact or something. It's the same thing is going on, and both sides are vying to feel like they're heard. So I love that first step. I love that. Yeah. So, okay, next, step number 2.
So now we're getting curious with compassion, and the term compassion here is really important. And so the thing is, and you're a fellow lawyer, so for instance, a prosecutor is curious for sure. They might ask some questions. Compassion isn't part of it. Usually, if it's a cross-examination. And so the reason
the opposite of that, I want to get them.
Exactly.
I want to catch them.
Exactly. And here's the thing: in these tough situations, people are going to interpret what you're saying through that lens. They're going to feel as though, even if you maintain a neutral tone, it's more likely that they're going to interpret it negatively. And so I really want to stress the compassion portion of it, because I want you to be mindful of your tone while you're asking these open-ended questions. And so we're actually seeking to learn. We're asking the questions and getting information from them so you can empathize at a higher level. And so as you start to get through the funnel, the persuasive funnel here, we can, as we gather more information, now we can be a little bit more persuasive with the questions, because sometimes people struggle to empathize with you. But if you ask a great question from your perspective, it forces them to empathize. So for instance, you could say, okay, I understand why you might have said that. Out of curiosity, I love the term out of curiosity. It really helps to soften whatever comes next. Out of curiosity, how do you think that impacted me? Or how do you think that made me feel? Because a lot of times people don't even think of that. They've never even thought of it. Yeah. I see it now. And so it is a way of triggering empathy in them so they can see it from their perspective, from your perspective. And think about this, Rebecca. We haven't even made a point yet. Right? We haven't even said something. We're leading them through this process. And then as we continue the conversation, then we can transition to joint problem solving, where we say, okay, so going forward, what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And so what can we do in our company to make sure that we can take the right steps forward? We're inviting them into the process and creatively coming up with some solutions that can solve the problem that we're dealing with.
Yeah, but if you ask that question of a narcissist, so they're going to turn it around somehow that it impacted them.
We see that a lot.
Yeah. So, okay, and let's talk about step 3.
Yeah, and so now in joint problem solving, we're inviting them into the problem solving process. And the reason we do this is because collaboration builds commitment. If we just force an answer on somebody in one of these types of conversations, it makes it less likely for the deal to be what they call self-enforcing. We want them to feel as though they had some role in creating the solution, and it makes it more likely for them to actually commit for the long term, because they say, oh, this wasn't just Rebecca forcing me to do it. No, this was my idea too. And so even if you do know what the right answer ultimately will and should be, you want to make them feel as though they were part of the process of creating it in order to make it work. And so again, very flexible, and you can interchange the parts based on what you're seeing. But if you just stick really closely to that framework as the negotiation or conversation becomes more and more emotionally charged, you're not going to go astray, and you're going to see the conversations end up being a lot more productive.
Oh, I love this so much, because it really is all about coming back to that same premise, which is that all people want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. And so everything flows through that lens, no matter what you're doing in a negotiation. And it's kind of like a generous process. It's a giving process in a way. And a lot of people may say, I don't care what the other person is feeling. I don't care. I don't have any compassion for the other person. I think they're a jackass. And that's fine. But if you want something from that person, which you obviously do, or you wouldn't be having the conversation with them, then this is what you got to do.
Exactly, Rebecca. And that's the thing too. I tell people all the time, because they say, listen, these people don't deserve this from me. They need to be held accountable. And notice what I'm saying is you're not letting people off the hook. You're certainly not doing that. You're just being mindful of the slight distinction, the fine line between holding somebody accountable and triggering shame. So we have to take a step back and
Oh,
evaluate our
Brene
goals.
Brown would be so proud of you for
Yes.
saying that.
That's right. That's right. And so we have to evaluate our goals. If our goal is simply to emote and let the person know how frustrated we are, we don't even care if they change. We just want to let them know. Okay, then, and then have the conversation how you want. However, if you want to have a conversation that is calibrated to have a high persuasive impact, and you want to avoid these unnecessary barriers to success, then you want to use something like this framework, because for you and I know this from our high stakes negotiations, a lot of times we have to swallow our pride in order to approach the conversation in a constructive way, in order to get what we want. That's just the fundamental of negotiation persuasion. That's just psychology. And so you have to reconcile that within yourself. What is your goal? What are you willing to do or say in order to accomplish that goal? And that's really a personal decision that you have to make. But if you want to be as persuasive as possible, then there are years and years and years of psychological research on the science of persuasion that say that there are certain things that you should and shouldn't do in order to be successful.
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. So I want to get to, we're kind of about at the end here, but I really would love for you to talk more about how to look at conflict as an opportunity. That's something that you talk about. And I don't think most people look at conflict as an opportunity. They look at it as something they want to avoid at all costs.
Yes, and here's the thing: when it comes to conflict, of course, it's by design uncomfortable, right? We have to kind of just come to terms with that for the most part. But in every single conflict, in every single interaction that we're having with somebody, there is some opportunity. And some people might say, "Well, Kwame, have you done a peer-reviewed study to see if there's actually an?" Okay, just wait. Hear me out here. And so there might be an opportunity to build a relationship. There's definitely an opportunity to learn. And let's say you're in a negotiation with a narcissist, right? The 1%, is it 1% of the population who on the
They say it's
DSM?
6%.
Oh my gosh, it's getting worse.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So the six, if you're dealing with that 6% of the population who, no matter what you do, no matter what techniques you use and how reasonable you are, they don't adjust and they only respond to force. Okay, if you're dealing with that, then you might say, Kwame, where's the opportunity there? You're getting better. Every single time we have these conversations, these are opportunities to practice. These are opportunities to start to develop what I call the habit of engagement, because a lot of us are conflict avoidant because we don't know how to have the conversation and we don't have the confidence, and because it's uncomfortable. It makes sense. But if we want to really start to see the change that we want to see in the world and in our lives and get what we deserve, we have to start taking these opportunities to have these difficult conversations. So even if the conversation goes really, really poorly, it was still worth it because you're getting stronger in the process. And
Yes,
so there's always an
100%.
opportunity there.
100%. And you say you find confidence in conflict, which I love that quote from you. So thank you so much. Tell us where we can learn more about you and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I'm always on LinkedIn. Check me out on LinkedIn, connect with me. And the book is Finding Confidence in Conflict, How to Negotiate Anything and Live Your Best Life. The rebrand should be done next week. And then, of course, the podcast, Negotiate Anything.
All right. I love it. And do you have a website?
Oh, yes. AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com. We do negotiation consultation and training for business owners, leaders, and corporate environments too.
This is fantastic. What an important conversation, and probably one of the most personal that I've ever had. So thank you so much, Kwame, for helping us bring this information to everyone.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me for part 2 of my 2-part conversation with the incredible Kwame Christian. If you are getting ready to negotiate at all, or with a high conflict personality, with a narcissist, or with anyone, make sure you grab my free Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet. You can get it at the link below, or just go to winmynegotiation.com and it will be all yours. If you want extra support, you're dealing with high conflict people or narcissists, come join me in my free private Facebook group. It's called Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung, and I'll drop a link to that below as well. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a share, drop me a comment, let me know that you were here. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, now's a great time to do that. You just hit subscribe and then you hit that notification bell, and then you'll be notified every time I upload brand new content just for you. I'm Rebecca Zung. I'm so glad you stopped by today, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember, today's a great day to start negotiating your best life.